This week, a ton of earnings reports came out, as well as Tesla's annual shareholder meeting. So I've been working overtime, plowing through documents and videos to give you all the details. We'll discuss 7 of them now, just leaving Amprius and IonQ for next week. Let's dive in. So let's kick things off with Palantir. People always like to say that nobody knows what Palantir does. I would like to give it a go anyway. I don't think it's that complex. Starting a bit with their mission statement, Palantir software powers real-time AI-driven decisions in critical government and commercial enterprises in the West, from the factory floors to the front lines. You would probably find a statement like this on any AI-driven data company, and that is because they're copying Palantir. Palantir was the first. They were working on this before anybody knew what a AI or a language model was. And they started by focusing on the defense side, so intelligence and defense. That's why the West comes back so often in their statements, co-founded by Peter Thiel. And so their sort of stack of products starts with ontology, which is like a digital twin of the organization or process they're trying to describe, identifying all the different elements in these systems or in these organizations. And on top of that sits their platform. So they have Foundry for the commercial side and Gotham for the defense and intelligence side, really specifically tailored to that. And then on top sits AIP, so Artificial Intelligence Platform, that is helping with all the decision making using language models. In the middle of it sits Apollo, which is basically the heart that beats and makes the blood flow, that is the data, move between all these different parts of the stack. So let's quickly look at their results. I started with the rule of 40, so 40 basically means that if you have a score of 40, you're doing pretty well as a company. They have a score of 40 of 114%. So this score basically adds the revenue growth and the operational margin. Their revenue growth was 63% and their operating margin was 51%, so that's insane, unheard of for companies like that. They raised their revenue guidance for the full year to 4.4 billion or 53% increase. Their commercial US revenue grew by 121%, so that's commercial enterprises adopting Palantir. Closed a lot of new deals, and I really like the description that Alex Karp gave in the earnings call. He said, you used to have to take your company private to change the unit economics of it. We are providing a private equity-like transformation in the public markets under the current leadership. And that is really the strength of AI and Palantir. You have these big companies that are inefficient, but they need to do everything they can to get efficiencies and to grow their margin. They have no idea where to begin. I know this because I see it a lot in the companies I work. And so this company helps you to generate more margin by improving your internal processes, and you have so many different examples of it. Companies' stock prices go up when they mention they're working with Palantir, and it is only the tip of the iceberg. There's almost no companies are working with Palantir if you compare it to the whole market, and so that's why I also think that this whole scare of AI is a bubble is overblown, because it hasn't even started yet, the real impact on the economy. So great results, accelerating even, super bullish on this company. So next is Aeva. I've done a deep dive on this company, which was my first video, so it's a bit rusty. But if you want to know everything about that company, do check it out. They're a LiDAR on chip company, so they make different types of products that leverage this technology for different types of verticals. So today they're mostly focused on automotive and manufacturing, but in the end they want to get into defense, robotics, consumers. So this can be a really interesting way of scaling, and they are working on improving their technology as well with their next generation chip. So pretty interesting company. So in terms of results, they're in the late stage of negotiations with a top 10 OEM, so a car manufacturer, for a production award. So this would basically mean that they would use their Atlas Ultra LiDAR system as a platform across all their vehicles. To support level 3 automated driving. It will be a global rollout, bar China, so not in China. And the adoption, they think, by this leader would trigger other companies to get on board too and start using their technology. Now looking at the top 10 car manufacturers, taking out Tesla because they use their own technology. They don't believe in LiDAR, and the Chinese because it's not going to be in China. For me, the most likely would be probably Volkswagen Group would be my gamble, and maybe that explains why they say top 10, because if they would say number one car company, everybody would know which one it is. Whatever happens, I think this could be a really cool accelerant for the company. Their collaboration with Daimler is going well for market entry in 2027. They're getting more and more into this precision sensing, so automated manufacturing with their EVE 1V product. Thailand production line is up and running, first products being produced and shipped. They secured funding, 100 million in the form of a convertible senior note. So that's debt from Apollo, but they can either pay for it in cash or in stocks at a small premium of 15%, and it's due in 7 years. So that takes their total liquidity to 207 million versus a cash burn of around 120 million per year. So that gives them a good runway of about 2 years. So the revenue for the quarter 3 is about 3.6. If I take their full year guidance, next quarter should be around 5.5 million. So let's see where that lands. It's very early days for this company, so it's normal that there's a bit of volatility in the revenue, as long as we see these programs progressing as well. Gross margin was around 12% for the last quarter. And of course operating margin is still quite far from being profitable. For that they need much higher revenues. So overall I would say on track. So moving on to Recursion, the mission of this company is to decode biology to radically improve lives. Now today a drug trial costs about $2 billion, and on average 90% of them fails. This company is trying to change that by using AI basically. So they have their Recursion operating system that runs millions of experiments per week. Their language model algorithms take the structured data from these experiments to create what they call maps of biology, so data maps, and those are then used for drug discovery. And the result is like a diverse therapeutic pipeline, so different types of drugs that they're working on. What is interesting for me is that there's quite a few big shareholders. So first of all, you have Christopher Gibson, that's the founder and current chairman. He handed over to the chief R&D officer in this call. He has about 15%. And then you have ARK Invest, a real innovation investor of 7.4%, and NVIDIA 1.8%. And I thought it was interesting to give their quotes a bit. So Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA: Recursion is one of the most important AI companies in the world. They are building the operating system for biology, and we're proud to power it with NVIDIA. So NVIDIA is basically giving them the stack that they need to run their supercomputer. And Cathy Wood, so the CEO of ARK Invest, Recursion is at the forefront of using AI to industrialize discovery. It's like having a massive programmable lab that can test millions of hypotheses in weeks, not years. We're doubling down because this is the future of medicine, and the market hasn't priced in how disruptive this will be. So you see that today the stock price is not super high, but if these different initiatives that they have in the pipeline land, then that can be really impactful. So here's that pipeline of different initiatives that they have ongoing. I won't go into all of the details, but they are all advancing as they should. Probably revenue is not going to come before like 2028. In the meantime, they do have some revenue coming in from different research milestones that they hit. So they recently unlocked a 30 million payment from a whole genome neural map that they created for 2 of their partners. They have about 800 million in cash, which gives them run rate through to 2027, so that's good to see. There was a change of leadership announced at this call, so their founder, Chris Gibson, steps down, becomes chairman of the board, and their chief R&D and commercial officer, who's been basically leading the calls for the past year, I think, will become CEO. So that's interesting. Just going to keep track of this company as it progresses. Every once in a while buy a bit more if it looks like it's doing well. But overall, I guess progressing as planned. Moving to quantum with D-Wave. I will do a detailed video on quantum computing soon and the different stocks that I hold linked to this opportunity. For now, the thing to know is that there are different types of approaching quantum. Most companies are working on gate models, And from what I understand, quantum annealing is a subsection of this larger gate model. Gate models can basically do everything people talk about when they talk about quantum computing, and annealing is more specialized, so and good for optimization and sampling problems. The difference in complexity is that with annealing you're just trying to harness the evolution of quantum states, and in gate models you're actually trying to control and manipulate these states, which makes it much more complex. And that also means that annealing today, in D-Wave's version, has commercial applications and they're generating revenue, whilst traditional like gate models are pretty far away probably in generating revenue. Quantum annealing is their core business model, the thing they've been working on for a long time, but they also announced that they're working on a gate model. I understand there is some overlap, so it's good to see that they're doing both. Moving to their results, so like I mentioned in a previous weekly rep, they started the Q Alliance, so a project that they co-founded to create a quantum hub in Lombardy, Italy. They also deploy one of their Advantage 2 annealing computer systems, so that's what you saw in the previous slide, the big system. I think these systems go for about 10 million, so that should generate a revenue hit. I suppose it's not yet in the P&L today because of a timing issue. On the right hand side you see the revenue per quarter, so they generated 3.7 million in the last quarter. This big hit is when they recognize the revenue coming from one of these Advantage systems. So they're working with a lot of different partners on as well commercially and in research. So here's a bit of a list of the companies they work with. And they reported a really strong balance sheet position with about 800 million in cash. This is no doubt coming from them taking advantage of their high stock price. So their stock price increased almost 2000% since the beginning of the year. And as you can see, the shares outstanding has increased quite significantly. So basically them taking advantage of that. I think in terms of gross margin, it's pretty decent, but of course we're looking at not really high revenue, so I would say overall things are on track, and let's see where this goes. Quantum is still really expensive in terms of stock prices and valuation, so like I said before, I hope this category dips a bit at some point so that we can get in at a more attractive price. Moving on to Tesla, so this is their annual shareholder meeting, not their Q3 results. I made a video about that one already, you can watch it. So briefly, their business, so they have EVs, both passenger cars and their semi-truck that they're coming out with. They have batteries, they have full self-driving, Cybercab and Robotaxi, and Optimus, the humanoid robot. And next I'll just go into most of the highlights of the shareholder meeting. So let me just ramble through all the things that happened at the meeting. So his performance package was approved, so that's good. The vote to investigate an investment in XAI passed. So XAI is his AI company that also owns X or Twitter. So that would be cool, and I think a lot of synergies with Tesla. Optimus, so they're going to start ramping up production next year. He thinks it will be one of the fastest ramp-ups. Subsequent new lines that they will implement to go from 10 million units per year to 100 to maybe billions per year is what he estimates. In the end it could 10x the size of the economy, he thinks, if we really have these humanoid robots picking up so much labor. And he expects the average cost of these Optimus robots to land at around 20k, so that's quite reasonable. And he thinks that as they progress further, they will just have a yearly release cycle where they make the next implementation of, or the next level of Optimus, basically like an iPhone. So that's really exciting. Then on full self-driving, so some improvements coming there. You'll probably be able to text within a few months whilst driving, so that's in the US. You will not get the warnings anymore that your eyes are not on the road or your hands are not on the steering wheel, because they think it's safe enough. Full self-driving now has about 5 million miles between accidents, whilst the average US driver, that's every 0.7 million miles. So FSD is almost 10x more safe. Then Cybercab, production starting in April 2026 probably. He hopes to ultimately achieve a production output of one car every 5 seconds. So that's the vision for further down the line. And then AI chips, his AI5 chip. He's very excited about this. You can see it in the presentation. So he thinks the performance will be similar to the NVIDIA Blackwell, but 3 times less use of energy and 10x less in cost. That's also because it's optimized for Tesla's AI software. It's not a general chip as the NVIDIA products are. So that's how they can achieve these multipliers versus the Blackwell. It will be produced in 4 places: Taiwan and Korea by TSMC and Samsung, and then in Arizona and Texas by TSMC. He already has the design in his head for AI6, which will be a doubling of the performance, and he indicated that they might have to build their own chip fab because their suppliers just cannot follow with the demand that he expects with the increase coming from Optimus, Cybercab and all that. So semi-truck is still ongoing for production next year. On cyber charging network, he said that ultimately you should be able to charge anywhere on Earth and go anywhere on Earth. Raw materials and batteries, so they have their lithium refinery, which is the biggest outside of China, and a cathode factory. He was mentioning some things about building resilience in the supply chain, and like you see with the chips and all the other things, if they cannot get enough from their suppliers, they just jump into the vertical themselves and create the capacity to produce. And then finally on SpaceX, so he's been holding off going public with SpaceX for quite a while because he wants to make sure that the mission of the company is not impacted by shareholders being difficult and all that. But he is starting to turn a bit and to be open towards maybe going public at some point, mainly so that retail investors can benefit from it too. So that would be really cool. Moving on to American Battery Technology Company. If you're a shareholder in this company, you've had quite a ride over the past month and a half. If you want to know more about the company, watch my deep dive. But briefly, they're in 2 basic lines of business. They do battery recycling in their pilot plant shown here. They're also working on a next commercial scale factory. And then they do lithium mining that they're trying to start up in their lithium clay ground in Tonopah. So the company will have their annual shareholder meeting next week. So they didn't have an earnings call yet this week following the results. So this is just coming from the comments in their report. So as also mentioned in one of the weekly reps, they posted their pre-feasibility study for the lithium field, NPV of 2.5 billion. So that would be really cool if it comes through. They have worked on a deal for battery energy storage systems, BESSs, worth 30 million with the US Environmental Protection Agency. So these are like the big stationary battery systems that might be used next to AI data centers or things like that. And to be able to get that contract, they've had some downtime during the quarter to facilitate enhancements to the factory that were prerequisites to get this contract. And so you see it in the quarterly revenue generated, there's quite a big drop. So if this is to get future increases of feedstock, that would be very acceptable, of course. In September, they also announced a collaboration with Call to Recycle for consumer electronics as a feedstock into the factory. And they have a cash balance of 55 million now. And they paid off all their debt, and that of course has to do with the pretty nice ride in their stock price. It went from around $1 per stock to about 5, or at some point even 11. And you see that they increased the shares outstanding by about 23% in the quarter. So taking good advantage of that increase in stock price to generate some cash for the company. So that's good to see. So let's end on Archer Aviation. Archer makes these cool looking planes. So they're eVTOLs. eVTOL stands for electrical vertical takeoff and landing. So they basically take off vertically like a helicopter, and then they fly horizontally like a normal plane. Especially for short distances, this is really interesting. So let's look at their results. So they raised 650 million in equity capital, putting their total liquidity at over 2 billion. They use about 400 million to finance their operating activities per year, so that gives them quite a lot of runway, about 5 years in that case. But I think they're also going to do a bunch of acquisitions. So they acquired a little airport called Hawthorne Airport in the middle of Los Angeles, about 3 miles from LAX, from which they are planning to launch their air taxi network. Here at the bottom you can see a rendering of what they want it to look like at some point with their midnight aircrafts and some private planes. They acquired a portfolio of patents from Lilium, a German competitor that went bankrupt. And besides their efforts to get approval to launch in the US, which is quite a bit of a regulatory, a lot of hoops to jump through, they're also launching in other countries. So they're starting to deliver and flying their planes in Abu Dhabi, and they're starting up partnerships with Korea and Japan. So that's exciting to see. So in terms of objective of ramping up, they're planning to ramp up to about 50 aircrafts per year in their production facility. And another interesting part of their business in defense, where they have a partnership with Anduril, they mentioned it's ongoing, but there are no real updates. This could be a really valuable part of the company, which could also feed back into the commercial end. Their stock trades currently at about $8. It's hard to tell what you should really give for this type of company. Of course, they don't have revenue yet. A $5 billion market cap. Of course, they do have about 2 billion in cash. So an interesting company to keep an eye on and maybe build a position if you think this can be a winning market. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Definitely let me know what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe, follow, recommend it to a friend. And as always, this is just my opinion, not investment advice. Do your own research, and I hope to see you in the next one.